Hello again. So great to have you with us here on Leading Edge. I'm your host, Jeff Smith. Coming up in just a few minutes, in your lifetime, what has been the most traumatic, real thing that you've ever seen on TV? The Kennedy assassination, the Challenger explosion, all the coverage when we lost John Lennon, when John Hinckley Jr. shot President Reagan, the George Floyd video, 9/11. I could go on, but I'll tell you what, before this past weekend with what happened to President Trump, all of those before things were top of mind. But you know what? The impact is all about the when it happens in your lifetime and how it shapes your life. We're going to talk about processing these times, no matter how old you are. That's coming up in just a bit. But first, I had to share with you the latest story from our 11 Investigates team. It's been looking into blight issues in the city of Toledo for years. But there's something our team has never experienced before. A series of properties that have seemingly just slipped under the radar of both state and city officials.
Yards from the Anthony Wayne Trail, in plain sight of downtown Toledo, there's a strip of land that the city has forgotten.
You can just take a look around at this place. It looks like a hurricane went through here.
A lot flooded from a water leak, homes split open, piles of trash, waist-high grass. None of it from a hurricane, but from neglect.
It was significantly nicer when I moved in.
3 years ago, Willie Smith moved into a trailer at Riverside Mobile Home Estates.
These are old trailers. And I understood that when I moved in. But the grass was cut.
And he had power, but no more. The electric company says faulty wiring would make it too dangerous to try to turn it back on.
And I don't have power. I basically just have a roof over my head and running water.
All for a $350 monthly rental payment. The owners are an LLC. On the state paperwork, when asked their corporate purpose, they said to run our mobile home park without tenants thinking we are a scam. But Smith has never seen them. There is no number. But they owe Toledo $150,000 for their water bill, and the county thousands of dollars for their taxes. And they are trying to evict Willie Smith. So you lost in court, and you're supposed to be evicted, correct?
Yeah. Well, I guess I didn't. Story. I can't really say I lost in court because I never got a day in court. Judge Howard decided to, rule against me without me being here.
Instead, he was in the hospital being treated for a heart attack.
While I was in the hospital, wondering if I was going to live or die because my heart wasn't working. That's when he decided to make his judgment.
Willie showed us paperwork the hospital sent to Toledo Municipal Court. Though he admits being behind on his rent, he also showed us Venmo receipts. Payments, he says, that were stolen and never credited toward his rent. About to be evicted from a place where few people would even want to live.
I'm shocked that an eviction process can happen here because I don't think an eviction should happen, let alone renting to somebody. These are not maintained in a way that is livable, and it's really unfortunate, and it feels predatory.
Bad pipes underneath there.
Councilman Nick Comize responded after Willie reached out to 11 Investigates. He brought with him the environmental, water, and code enforcement departments.
People don't deserve to live like this, and it's unconscionable that somebody would allow it to deteriorate to this level and not do anything about it.
Neglected by the owners, seemingly forgotten by the city.
I certainly see that the city's connection is real here too, right? We should have been on top of this already, and so, I apologize to the residents here for that, but I want them to know that we're going to do everything we can to connect them to a new place to live.
For Willie, Comize has hooked him up with resources to get housing and legal help, but he knows that something has to be done with Riverside Mobile Home Estates.
I just want some attention brought to this. I don't know what can be done at this point, honestly, but this can't keep going. They're trying to move more people in here.
Stay right there. When we come back, lead investigator Brian Duggar joins me to discuss how this landed on our radar and how we are helping and what we've learned since this story first aired. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's now welcome in WTOL 11 Investigates lead investigator Brian Duggar. I watched this week. That's why I wanted to have you on here for Leading Edge, because I was kind of standing in the studio, jaw on ground, as we're seeing this kind of play out. But I did want to cover a couple of things with you, Brian. First and foremost, Willie, who we met. He's not homeless. He has a job. He has not been able to work. I asked you, has anyone said to you, listen, this guy chose to live there?
Yeah, I actually asked Willie that. Why do you live here? Because it's so bad. He doesn't have power. He doesn't really have sewage. He does have running water. But I said, Willie, why would you live here? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I'm trying to save up enough money so that I can go somewhere else. I don't want to live here, but at least now I have a roof over my head.
He has a job.
He has a job. He actually has a welding job in Toledo. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to work a lot because he's had a number of health problems over the years. You heard in that story, I mean, he actually had a mild heart attack, and that is his 5th heart attack in the last 7 years. So it's been difficult for him to work a full shift. He said he works about 10 to 12 hours a week.
I preface this by saying, how did this get on our radar? How'd you find out about this?
Yeah, amazingly, Willie actually reached out to me. You think about this, he doesn't have anything.
He doesn't have any power. How did he reach out?
He doesn't have any power, but he's got a cell phone that somehow I think he charges up at work. You know, he's sitting there in the dark in his trailer, and in the middle of the night, I basically got a message from him saying that, hey, I'm being evicted from my home, help me.
Right.
And that's how he ended. He said, help me, Mr. Duggar.
And this is how we, honestly, folks, this is how we get a lot of our stories that you guys cover. Simple emails, simple phone calls made to the station.
Yeah, and I didn't know what to make of it.
Okay.
You know, I was sitting with Melissa Andrews, who, you know, does some investigations for us, and she said, you know, let's go over to the trailer park and see what it looks like. And we were stunned. I mean, I had never been over there, but I mean, we were literally stunned.
You explained it in the beginning. This is just off the trail near the Trail and City Park, and you can see downtown Toledo from this property. Absolutely.
It's less than a mile from downtown Toledo. And I drive the trail, and I had never really noticed it before, but now that I've been there, I actually look through the trees on my way home, and you can clearly see it. And you can see, you know, the garbage, the rundown trailers, you know, the huge pile of trash in the center. You can actually see this from the trail.
Let's allow people to, I guess, experience you diving into this and what calls you are making, what you're able to find out. Let's start with the LLC that's responsible for this property, because I asked you, I said, you've done tons of landlord stories over the course of many years, those who are bad landlords. Is this that type of situation, or is it extremely different?
No, I mean, it really is. I mean, this LLC is based out of Chicago, but there's no phone number for them. There's no easy way to get a hold of them. I couldn't figure out how to get a hold of them. I did find their lawyer who was representing them. I called him, and he said, I'm going to send a message up to the owners, and hopefully they'll get back to me. But the lawyer even said, I have a really hard time getting a hold of these guys, so I don't know if I'll be able to get back to you. And they did actually get back to the lawyer, and the lawyer got back to me and said, this is what the LLC said. They said, we have a couple potential buyers, but we're really struggling. But as far as I can tell, nobody's ever seen these guys in Toledo. Willie has never seen them on the property. He doesn't know how to reach out to them because, again, there's no phone number.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What are they responsible for as far as that property is concerned? When you have an apartment building, obviously it's a very different scenario, but as far as the grounds, as far as the upkeep of those trailers, anything along those lines?
Yeah, so the Ohio Department of Commerce, ultimately they do the oversight of the land inside mobile home parks. So the high grass, and you saw the video, the grass has not been cut in several years. I mean, it's 4 to 5 feet high,
Weeds are
probably
running out.
in places.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, they need to maintain the land. There's a huge pile of trash next to the office building, which apparently they had taken away a dumpster like years ago, and the residents had nowhere to put this trash. So what they were doing, they were walking down to the office and they're just dumping the trash there. There was no garbage pickup by the city in this place. So at least now they have a dumpster that they've brought out to the location. So people are putting their trash there. Willie told me that he would bundle up his trash, get on his bicycle, and ride down the road to somebody who had their garbage bin out and stick it in their garbage can.
Yeah. You said there are other individuals who are living on this property.
Yeah, we believe there's about 10. Willie said that...
And you haven't heard from any of them?
I have not heard from any of them. I have not... We did see some people in the back, but it was there's a lot going on back there. There's like a lot of, it looked like a junkyard outside certain trailers.
And you said some of the trailers had power.
Some of the trailers that actually were vacant actually had power. And I told Willie, I said, why don't you just go over there? Because they've actually got power.
Right. Let's talk about the city getting involved. You got Councilman Comives out there. He brought another contingent. You've made calls to the mayor to try to get him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the first things I did was to reach out to Nick and said, you know, what do you know about this place? And I said, Nick, why don't you meet me down there and we can walk and talk through the thing. And he came down, and as he rolled in,
Had he ever noticed it before?
He did not. That is actually not his district.
Right.
And Willie had said that he had reached out to somebody else, another council member whose district that is, and he never heard back. But he said, you know, Nick came down, and Nick came down with the environmental department, came down because the belief was there was a sewage leak because across the road from Willie, like there's this water bubbling up. And what it turned out, there's like 2 trailers in this park that are just gushing water from underneath and flooding the land right beside Swan Creek, which is obviously discharging into the creek. But we don't believe there was sewage at that point, although Willie has said he's certainly seen it other times. So the environmental department came out, the water department came out, and code enforcement was out there taking pictures.
I asked you before we started, I asked about the health department, I asked about any of the healthcare corporations that exist in town, whether or not they have any scratch in this at all. I mean, I want to preface everything by saying, as we said at the top, Willie has chosen to live there. However, it's not feasible, like Nick Comives said, it's not feasible that somebody actually does live there.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that it certainly isn't sanitary.
I mean, when we were dealing with the apartment problems in downtown Toledo, those conditions were called inhumane. What is this?
It's worse. I mean, I've seen a lot of bad properties in Toledo, and these are the worst conditions I've ever seen. And you'd mentioned the mayor earlier. He was in D.C. not too long ago talking about these predatory LLC who kind of own these properties in Toledo while these Toledoans are living in squalor. So he was very interested in that. So I am trying to get him involved. And, you know, hopefully he will at some point, because this seems to be right up, I mean, the same sort of thing.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, since this first aired on WTOL, let's talk a little bit about what you have learned, what has kind of progressed since there. And you mentioned as well, a couple of times, there were court date discussions as far as Willie was concerned?
Yeah, so Willie, by the time we got out there, the court had ordered that he was going to be evicted. He had a hearing, and during that hearing, he had a heart attack. And he could not make the hearing. The hospital sent over paperwork to the court.
He had a heart attack before the hearing was supposed to happen?
He had a heart attack before he was in the hospital at the time that his hearing was supposed to happen at 1:30 p.m.
Gotcha.
And the hospital sent over paperwork to the court. They held the hearing without him. The judge ordered that, you know, against him, that he was to be evicted. And a side note, we were out there, and a bailiff had stopped out the other day, who's actually a friend of Willie. And he said sometimes he just kind of goes over there and gives Willie a little bit of food, a little bit of water, and he just kind of wanted to go talk to him because he had seen the story.
Are there any next steps as far as the state is concerned and or the city?
Yeah, well, what I was going to say, Jeff, is that after our story aired, the judge actually vacated that decision. So at this point, later this week on Friday, he's going to have another hearing, and he's going to have an attorney with him because Comives worked with Legal Aid of Western Ohio, got them involved in this case, and they've agreed to represent him.
No kidding.
So he's going to have a lawyer next Friday to fight to try to stay in this trailer without power or anything.
Right.
But as far as the state being involved, yeah, the Department of Commerce, again, they oversee the land in this trailer park, and they told me that this place doesn't even have a license because it had so many citations years ago that it wasn't able to keep its license, and to get its license renewed, it would have to fix all of these things. So they said they're very aware of this park, and they are investigating some sort of enforcement action against this park, which could include shutting it down.
Well, I'll tell you what, be sure to keep it tuned to WTOL throughout the rest of this week. Brian will stay on top of it. Brian, thank you for the insight. Fantastic job once again. If you missed any part of any of the 11 Investigates work, go to the WTOL 11 YouTube channel. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. I wanted to take a moment today to discuss processing and dealing with what we see in traumatic events on television. We're blessed to have and to work in this medium, but sometimes real life gets almost too real. Now, the list is long. There have been many, so many traumatic events played out on the airwaves over the years. But with the assassination attempt on President Trump's life, I thought it was fitting to revisit some of the things as we as adults try to process it, and what kids should be doing as well. Nick RYBAK joining me from Mercy Health. Good to see you. Thanks for being here to talk about this. I talk about it as in when we see these things. Is that a fair assessment for what age you're at and how it impacts you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, if you consider just, let's compare a 60-year-old person versus a 30-year-old person versus a 6-year-old, right? The 6-year-old has experienced so much less of life than the 30-year-old than the 60-year-old.
Yeah.
Like you had mentioned in the intro, you know, somebody who was born maybe, you know, the early 1960s, right? They've seen the Challenger explosion. They maybe were aware of the Kennedy assassination, and so on and so on.
Right.
You know? So there can also be a significant differing in understanding of each age group, you know?
Of course.
Yeah.
There's a way to process these things. So when we see our kids going through this, seeing things like they did last week, how do we approach it? How do we address it?
Well, first things first, I mean, I'd like to emphasize the importance of anybody who's in a caretaker role, you know? Be it parent, be it caring for an older relative, whatever it may be. You know, the importance of being able to take care of yourself, because if you follow the logic, how can you be an effective caretaker, an effective buffer zone, an effective filter, however you see yourself?
Right.
How can you do that effectively for someone if you're not
Self-care.
handling? Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
You told me before we came on here, you said there's a way, when we talk about processing events like this, there's a way to get yourself back to zero.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Definitely. Well, if you'd be interested in learning about this method, I'll walk you through it briefly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is something
5 steps.
Yeah. Yes, 5 steps exactly. I bring this up in a lot of my own therapy sessions. My day job, I am a therapist. I work with survivors of violent crimes, you know, extremely traumatic experiences. And so with said traumatic experiences, there can also be a lot of anxiety symptoms that come along as well.
Sure.
The method I'm going to explain here is fantastic for re-regulating yourself, bringing you back to a comfortable space that roots you right here, right now, in the present day.
And it's all about senses, sensory subjects.
Exactly.
So you, and I want to jump ahead, you talk about not only sight, smell, feel, touch, all of those things, feel and touch being redundant, but all of those play into it.
Absolutely. The way this works is you get yourself nice and in the zone, you know, take a few deep breaths in, hold for 5 seconds, and release. Sit however you feel comfortable, get yourself nice, focused.
Kind of a cleansing, right?
Exactly. After that, you start taking in the things that you can see in your environment. And maybe these are things you've looked at every single day, but you've never seen. So I'm looking at my water bottle over on the table there, you know, I'm noticing, oh, that's a very vivid shade of green, you know? So you list off 5 things that you're able to see. After that, you move on to 4 things that you're able to feel, be it temperature in the room, be it the feel of your feet in your shoes, be it how the couch or the chair or whatever you're sitting on feels.
Are all of these things to take you away from reality, or are they to kind of ground you in the now?
Combination of both.
Okay. We got about 1 minute.
Definitely. Consider this method as sort of a Control-Alt-Delete for your own brain. You open up your Taskmaster, you get rid of the stuff that you don't want to work with, that you don't need, and you can proceed back into your day feeling comfortable, feeling grounded.
In 15 seconds, is there any healthiness to actually seeing and processing these types of things?
Absolutely. Being able to talk with others, being able to explain to others what you're feeling, what you've seen, and talking about it in a constructive way.
Nick, I want to point out to people at home, Mercy Health, the Toledo Trauma Center, that is available. There are many ways to reach the Trauma Recovery Center. You see right there the phone number 419-251-0707, or you can reach out simply to Mercy Health Toledo, trc@mercy.com. Nick, great stuff. We appreciate it.
I appreciate the time.
Very important topic. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. Wanted to share that information with you one more time before we say goodbye for this week. As a reminder, if you missed any part of our interviews, you can always go back to the WTOL 11 YouTube page. And Leading Edge is also a podcast on Spotify and Apple. We'll see you next time.